Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to our live feed update for September 28th. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and I'm here today to update you on everything that happened yesterday on the Big Brother 26 live feeds. It was day 74 in the house, and we had some nominations. And we had some people maybe opening their eyes a little bit, trying to start a little bit of a revolution. We'll talk about it all here today. And with me to talk about it all is Aman. How you doing, Aman?
Oh, the sweet smell of blood in the air, the potential for bloody revolution that probably won't happen and gets smited down as soon as it starts. But, it's fun to dream. I'm glad to be back.
Yes. Well, let's get straight into it, of course, with Leah and Angela gone. MJ won the HOH. And she intends to nominate Kimo and Rubina, with Kimo as the target. She also came up with this plan to potentially use the veto on Rubina to sort of extra make her feel like she's on her side. Let's do this girls thing to the end kind of thing. That was a plan she floated the night before here. And so that is sort of where we start the day. Is MJ needs to talk to some people and enact some of these plans.
Yeah, gotta do Chelsea's bidding, make sure that she's all set up for the end game because there's nothing like spending 90 something days or 80 something days in a house only to go home in third or second. Love it.
Yeah. So before MJ gets her thing going, Cam and Chelsie do talk about the week. They have decided they would prefer Kimo to leave this week, of course. And there's some talk about then once Kimo is gone, of course, the door opens up again to take out MJ and bring Rubina to the final three, which would obviously be an easier final three for the two of them collectively. I would not say an easier final three for Chelsie in particular, and we'll see if the day's events end up changing her mind on this. But once again, Chelsie, at least entertaining the idea of MJ leaving, which I still don't think is the greatest call for her.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like what I like that Chelsea's doing is that it's always still healthy to sort of still think about it and postulate, because there is the possibility at the end of the day that Mackenzie does wake up somehow and is like, girl's got to go because she's up there with me. We've won the most. I'm very loyal to her, but like at the end of the day, we're down to the wire. So I think I hope you guys didn't hear that. I think it is a good idea to float. As of right now, Mackenzie is like fully in on Chelsie. The Chelsie can do no wrong in her eyes, so it really doesn't make much sense at this point in time. But doesn't hurt. It's healthy to question.
I'll disagree on that. I think it very much hurts. I think that floating the idea out is the worst thing that you can do because you should either do it or not do it.
Floating
not float the idea.
Oh, no. I agree there. Yes. Floating it out and putting the seeds in other people's heads while at this current state, she is loyal to you. Not the best idea. But, it's the fact that it's in her head that she could get turned on, I think is always a good thing to have. A little healthy bit of paranoia.
Yeah, well, MJ talks to Rubina, speaking of seeds that have been floated. And MJ, of course, is going to let Rubina know she's going on the block, but she tries to do kind of the thing that she's been planning to do, which is, hey, you may be going on the block, but I don't want you to go home. I want to make sure you're protected. Rubina understands the position that she's in. MJ says, I've even considered the idea that, what if we use the veto on you? I've talked to Chelsie a little bit about that. Like, I think maybe she could use the veto on you too. And Rubina's like, speaking of Chelsie,
here we go.
Might be interesting for you. Like, you might be interested to know that before the double eviction, she came to me and she was basically pitching that we should take you out. And MJ's like, whoa. Well, of course, that's not something I would be unaware of, but thank you for telling me. Oh boy. And Rubina, she makes an attempt here. This was something that we noted was something that Chelsie had done, right? So Cam had convinced Chelsie we should take out MJ in the double, or at the very least, Kimo and Rubina should take out MJ in the double. We should vote her out. He then went to Rubina and pitched the final four plan to Rubina as part of a sort of an attempt to get them to the final four. Him, Kimo, Rubina, him, and Chelsie, which obviously implied that they should be going after MJ. Then Chelsie went straight into it with Rubina and pitched, "You should target MJ. She's a big comp threat. We can't beat her in the end." And these are the words that Rubina is now repeating to MJ, making a hard pitch against Chelsie, leaving Cam out of it. And you know, in a world where MJ has a head on her shoulders, this would be bad for Chelsie.
Really bad for Chelsie. I honestly, I feel like at this point in a time, Rubina, I don't necessarily like the way that you went about doing this. Just rip the band-aid off, sis. You're down at the final five. It is what it is. I think this sort of like beating around the bush while revealing this information is like, oh, well, she was kind of, saying that I should target you. Well, it makes it all too easy for Chelsie, which we'll talk about in a moment, to just be like, oh, well, I was just saying that because of course I'm going to say that because obviously, who else am I going to say? But like, obviously it's you and us to the end, Mackenzie. Like it's me. I'm Chelsie. It's me. It makes it too easy for her to do that. Rubina, you should just say Chelsie wants you out, but she doesn't want to be the person to do it because
That's what she did say that, to be fair.
Just put it out there in the open and be flat out with it because you have nothing to lose at this point. Just be honest. Just be clear and cut. And if Mackenzie doesn't hear it, she doesn't hear it, but at least it's out there now.
Yes, she did say nearly those words, basically saying that I think what she was trying to do was get me to take the shot because she wasn't willing to do it herself. And I think there are a couple of problems here. One is that MJ knows that what she did with Leah was a mistake. And but it kind of worked out. Look at her. Angela left anyway. She's the HOH. Everything's fine. Nobody needs to acknowledge that she made a mistake. And so she's pushing really hard to like just put the blinders on from here on out and just like live in this world where she didn't just make that massive mistake and shouldn't feel bad about what happened with Leah. And so having to accept that it was not only a colossal mistake to take Leah out, but that she was like fully being played that week to the extreme degree of Chelsie actively trying to get her gone in the following double eviction. That's a huge, huge pill to swallow that MJ does not want to swallow. In addition to that, there's a separate issue, which is that unfortunately for Rubina and MJ, Leah was good enough at convincing MJ that none of what was being said was true and that Rubina must be lying, that MJ now sees Rubina as a liar because she attributes all of the false information about Leah, which wasn't actually false information. Because the thing was that Leah was being falsely attacked, falsely targeted by MJ, but the things that were being said about Leah were mostly true. But because it was such an obviously bad move, MJ was like, well, I shouldn't be doing this. Therefore, the things that were said must not be true. And who was saying some of those things? Rubina. And if Rubina is saying these things, then Rubina is a liar. Leah leaves the house feeling like Rubina is the biggest liar in there. And MJ feels like Rubina is a big liar as well. So when Rubina comes out and says, hey, Chelsie was trying to get you back, get you targeted in the double eviction, I think she wants me to take you out. MJ is like, she's trying to do the same thing she did to Leah. And she doesn't hear a word of it.
The thing and the sad thing is that none of this really should matter. I mean, like, just think about what your end game was looking like, Mackenzie. Like, where do you stand the best chance of winning? Where? And if you're already having the doubts, which you talk about, Chelsie and Cam being together, girl, you're HOH. Like, whether Rubina is lying or not really is immaterial at this point. Again, it's the final 5. If you want to win, think about what you need to do to win. And that's basically what it just comes down to. But for whatever reason, it's not clicking. I'm not sure why, but it's not clicking.
The real story here, though, is that Rubina made this attempt at all. I mean, we were living in a world where everyone was protecting Chelsie, everyone was looking to bring Chelsie to the end, and we were talking about how Rubina and Kimo, they have a better relationship with Cam, but they're still sort of like acting on T-Core's orders to like work with Chelsie. However, this gambit by Chelsie to try to convince Rubina to go after MJ, which quite frankly, MJ was they were going to do anyway, has really backfired because now that MJ has won the HOH and Chelsea's up there with MJ 24/7, Rubina and Kimo both, and they'll talk about it later, are like, oh, Chelsea's a snake. And they are fully now turned against Chelsie, which may not matter for Chelsie right now, but it is certainly not the ideal scenario for an endgame where, especially, she plans on bringing one of them to the final 3. So there is an attempt here made on Chelsea's life. We'll see where it lands. Of course, MJ talks to Kimo as well, letting him know that he'll be going up. He does not make nearly as dramatic an attempt at throwing Chelsie under the bus here. So when MJ talks to Chelsie, she lets her know, hey, Rubina tried to convince me that you were trying to get me to get her to target me. Like, oh my God. I was trying so hard not to laugh in her face because it's obviously such a lie. And Chelsea's like, oh yeah, totally a lie, totally a lie. Like that Rubina, can't believe her. I'm just like, now I'm thinking maybe Rubina should go. And Chelsea's like, no, I think it's still fine to send Kimo out. He's more dangerous in competitions, so I don't think it's a big deal.
Which to be, if I'm Mackenzie, would be like a thing to like tilt my head at. I mean, yeah, sure, Kimo is just the target, just to be the target. But like, if she's really laying it on thick in your head, Mackenzie, that Chelsie was trying to get your ass out of there, and it's so obviously a lie, then why not go after Rubina? But again, it's not clicking. This is what happens when you spend a lot of time not really having a home in the Big Brother house, and then when you finally do, you don't want anything to ruin that, and you're so close to the end that you feel like you become the hero of your own journey. You've won all of these comps. You're feeling like, I finally have some people that I can work with. I'm also good at comps. I can beat almost anybody in these comps. I'm probably good. Let me just continue to do what I've been doing because I feel comfortable now. And again, it's the age-old adage that you should never really feel that comfortable in the house. And if you do, that means that other people are making the decisions for you and in front of your face. But it's not clicking.
MJ, of course, talks to Cam as well. They talk about being in the final 3 together. They're not afraid of going to the end with strong players, which I do believe MJ believes, but I don't believe Cam believes because Cam's targeting MJ. Now, Chelsie is talking MJ down about Cam. She's working to protect Cam, telling MJ that Cam also wants to go to the end with big players, is not looking to target her, which is a flat-out lie, because, of course, Cam is looking to target MJ and clearly does not want to go to the end with strong players, or at least not MJ as a strong player. But he's going to do some work to try to convince MJ that is, in fact, where he is looking.
I mean, the currency this season, especially during this endgame, really seems to be about, who's won the most comps. That seems to be what everyone is deeming as a good player this season, which, I guess that's all you really have to fall back on considering what some of the strategies.
I mean, that's most seasons.
Yeah, true. I mean, that's very true. But like, it's like interesting to me that like, there is no like respect or much like reverence towards a more like socially forward game.
They got rid of Joseph.
I'm a badass.
So, I mean, if that's what the jury is going to respect, then that's what the jury is going to respect. But I mean, I would say to Cam, like you're not completely out of this. Like there is a world in which you can win a couple of more comms and you can talk about just like the social maneuvering. You were only put on the block once. Like there is still a world in which comp threats are not like your biggest obstacle here. But you know,
Well, I think what's interesting about Cam is that, for the record, I don't think the jury will actually vote strictly on comps. I think that Quinn is not somebody that would be voting on competitions. I mean, in particular, like, we know that he's a listener of this podcast. We know that he was listening last year, so I'm sure, has heard much of the frustration about competitions. I would imagine he's not somebody that's going to be voting on comps. And then I don't think T-Core cares much about competitions either. I think that she's going to be pushing in the direction of just straight up Chelsie. But if not, just whoever else she feels best about. Um, so, I think that in the House, they're all concerned about comps, but I don't think that's going to actually be the determining factor, except for what I think is interesting is that Cam, I think, is hurting the most. I mean, certainly hurting the most from the change in competition structure, right? Because in a normal season, say last season, Cam is winning way more competitions. And he's probably in a much more dominant position, and he's probably like the person to beat right now, because everyone looks at him as the front runner. But this is not that season. In fact, because this season is riding on the backs of the last like 7 years of Big Brother, people expect him to be in that position, and the fact that he's not
hmm
makes them feel like he's even worse because the fact that Cam in particular has not won as many competitions as they expect him to makes people look at him as a weaker player, as a bit of a flop, a bit of a disappointment. Whereas, somebody else who's not winning as many competitions, you might see them as like plucky for having gotten this far. Cam is like, oh, what a flop that guy is. What a floater.
See, I was thinking about that the other day, and I was like, because he's the way that he's packaged, like what you're saying is right, and that everyone would believe him to be someone that would be good at comps, which sometimes, like when I'm really thinking about it, I'm like, not everybody that looks like he does is actually that coordinated. Like, you,
Yeah.
you can be very clumsy and not really, that's not your forte. But I mean, I do think that there is a way to flip that narrative as well. It's like, look, like you know, if I'm Cam, I'm trying to spin this narrative in my favor and be like, look, I didn't really necessarily have to win these comps. I might even try to like twist the truth a little bit and say, I kind of threw a lot of them because people were doing what I wanted them to do anyway. There is still that little bit of space to play. Now, again, I do think towards the end game, yeah, people are going to respect you getting yourself there, right? Like everyone likes that last push, that final push to put yourself in the final two chairs. So I'm not saying that never winning a comp is the way to go, but I do think that there is some space for you to say, look at me. Like I could not afford to win all of these comps because look what happened to Tucker. I didn't want to be the Tucker. I wanted to be the Cam, and I was able to just parlay my social relationships. I didn't. I was only put on the block once. No one ever really thought about putting me up there again. Like that's the game that I wanted to play.
The problem is the final two speeches is usually a bit too late.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. It is. It's a bit too late, and another push for maybe we should have the jury phase or the jury questioning a little bit
listen, they
longer.
fixed the comps. Can we fix one more thing,
Yeah,
please?
yeah, yeah. Because I think that gives up people a lot more to chew on for sure. But because he can't afford to start saying it now, obviously, because the only other option is to be like, I didn't need to. You can't start campaigning now because then you just clue people in on what you're doing, and then they're like, okay, well, let's get you out of here now. Then, so it's rough. I don't think that he's completely out of it. I still think that there's a world, especially if this Rubina situation starts to blossom a bit more. But yeah, it's a tough road for him to walk, at least right now.
Well, he is spending a lot of time with Rubina and Kimo, it's clear, we've talked about how he has a better relationship with them than Chelsie does, and that is really, really blossoming this week as they're hanging out a lot. They're spending time together. They're talking about being friends after the season. Um, so there is something here for sure, and we'll talk even more about it in just a second. But first, Kimo and Rubina are in fact nominated for eviction. Um, and when the feeds come back from that, of course, Kimo is pretty annoyed. I mean, he knew he was going up on the block, but he's like, "This is my 7th time on the block," I believe is what he said. And so, man, that's annoying. People have just seen me as expendable all season long. I feel like I've got some things to say. The Kimo that came out in the time leading up to the Cedric flip seems to be on its way back here. He says if MJ thinks Cam and Chelsie are taking her to the end, she's out of her mind. And Rubina's like, well, maybe we can make another attempt at trying to flip MJ, depending on what happens with this veto. Like if they win or MJ wins, maybe there's something that they can do. And Kimo's like, well, more importantly, we need to think about Cam because listen, Chelsie beats everyone in the end, says Kimo. Um, uh-oh. And the important person we need to flip is Cam, because if we can get Cam and pull him, like Cam should want to go to the end with us. He should be working with us. We would go to the end with him. And if we can convince him that he can't beat Chelsie in the end, why wouldn't he flip with us? And this is important because if Cam does win this veto, Cam can force Chelsie on the block and vote her out with one of their votes. Now, can you flip Cam is another question, but I mean, if they actually pitch this to Cam, I mean, this is Cam's MJ moment, right? Like, if he were to win that veto, he could win this game almost outright by taking out Chelsie and then getting to the 4 with MJ not able to win HOH.
As long as she doesn't win that veto.
It's a very decent position to be put in here.
3 against 1.
The question is, can he be convinced that Chelsie beats him in the end? And is he willing to turn on Chelsie if that gets through to his brain? And Cam is somebody that hasn't ever really been tested in this way. MJ has been tested many times and has failed that test many times. She's never graduating Big Brother school. But nobody's ever actually made an attempt at flipping Cam before. So
not the automatic fail, damn.
So is Cam self-interested? He has been self-interested all season long. He has continuously made moves that have been for his benefit, whether or not Chelsie has wanted them to happen. Chelsie has never influenced Cam in a direction he has not wanted to go. In fact, it's been the opposite way. Cam has influenced Chelsie far more than Chelsie has influenced Cam.
Oh, yeah, we know.
So the question remains, when it comes down to it, does any of that matter? Can he actually make a decision for himself that goes deeply against Chelsie? That is the question. And so the first question is, will they actually make this attempt? But we'll see if anything actually lands here. Of course, he would have to win that veto in the first place in order for any of that to matter. But Kimo tells Rubina if one of them leaves, say he leaves, she should be looking to go to the final 2 with Cam. That is the person they are trying to get to the end with. If they are not able to get to the end with each other, he is the person they feel they have the best shot at beating. So all of this is pretty good for Cam ultimately, but we will see if any of this again ends up mattering, because the comps might just be locked down at this point.
Yeah, I think Rubina and Kimo have to go for the jugular. I don't know if it needs to be a 1-2 punch. I don't know if you bring in Kimo first to do some talking. We don't really see Kimo do a lot of like game talk in like a real serious way though. So that's the issue, is that I don't know if he has persuasive if he's persuasive enough to get Cam on his side. I'm a little bit more confident in Rubina being able to do so. So maybe the both of them do it together. I do think that there's a world in which Cam can see that, especially if you go the comp angle. You say, look, she's going to be kind of tough to beat in the end. She's won a lot of HOHs. She's good to go. She also has some friends on the jury. Like, are you sure that you have a better relationship with Angela, Leah, Tico? You know you don't have a better relationship with Tigo than Chelsie does. What about Quinn? Do you think Quinn's going to vote for you over Chelsie? Like, come on, like it's getting down to brass tacks. And I would even say, like, and I know that it's all dependent on the veto, and no one wants to talk before the competition because then you don't want people trying harder in the veto. I say throw that shit out the window. Like, do it in front of Chelsie. Disarm her ass. That's what I would do. Like, be like, it's like the scene back in BB14 when Ian is going on. If anybody takes this mother effort to the end, he wins 7-0. Like, I want to see some sparks. Okay, I want to see y'all fight for it because it's got to get something turning in Cam's head. It has to, because it's the truth. It is the truth. Like, there's no disputing it. Even if he thinks in his head, like, oh, well, like, I can, I've been chilling this whole time. I can, like, I can beat him or Peter in the end. I can really put my best foot forward in the end. It's like, but why would you want to risk that when you could just get rid of her now? Like,
Yeah,
why?
I think that's true. I mean, I think that this is something that Rubina should have Kimo do ideally, because she doesn't want any further heat on her with this potential vote looming. But if they can approach Cam before the veto, then it won't look like they're desperate. It won't look like they're going to Cam because he has the veto, but instead because he's the person that they want to work with. So I do think it's important to make that approach beforehand. But of course, you have to be very careful ultimately about how you approach things, and what you say, as Leah found out. So
Mhm. Yeah,
we'll see.
we will see. We
Yeah.
will see.
All right. Well, anything else, Aman, from yesterday?
So I saw a tweet by BB23 winner Xavier. I wanted to get your take on it. I don't know if you saw it or not.
I don't think I did.
Hold on. Let me find it. It was very recent. It was like 2 days ago, and it sparked the endless debate
Oh boy.
on Twitter. It said, what did he say?
I feel
He
like
said,
Xavier's always trolling on Twitter.
oh, yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Discrediting a winner based on their cast is inherently flawed because Big Brother is a social experiment designed to reflect society, which has a variety of personalities and skill levels. Casts vary. Winners play the best game they can under the circumstances they're given. And then we had Tiffany Mitchell reply a little later on. I kind of disagree with this take. If LeBron James wins against a team of rookies, he still wins, but who cares?
Um, I think in general, I agree with Xavier there, particularly because it's it's not like this isn't I do also agree with what Tiffany said. The problem with the concept, I think, of trying to judge a player by their cast is that, unlike basketball, where you see a ton of games over a long period of time, and you can really gauge, like, okay, these players lose to these people, these people, these people, these people, these people. They are not winning at all. They are bad players. Then you could say, yeah, like, this NBA player versus some high school kids is not a fair game. But Big Brother's only ever played once in its configuration, right?
Hmm.
Most players only play one time ever, and if they play again, it's such a different set of circumstances because it's their second time versus sometimes first times, or second time versus second times. But relationships have developed, and there are other factors involved, so that it's not a pure game anymore. And so how do you actually determine who's super good and who's super bad? And we talked a little bit about this the other day, that the way that I try to look at it, in terms of like what I attribute a move, or who I attribute a move to, is like, how much did they actively work to make that happen, versus how much did the player just do it on their own. So like MJ making mistakes on her own, I wouldn't attribute to Chelsie, but Chelsie actively working MJ to make sure that she makes those mistakes, I would attribute to Chelsie. And that's how I personally do it. How the viewers will end up viewing it, how history will view it, will always just attribute it to Chelsie. But that is just the way of things. Um, so, ultimately, I don't think that we can truly judge a player by their cast. I think that without a doubt, this is one of the lower skill casts we have ever seen. I think that
Mhm.
until recently, a lot of them were just making their own mistakes. And Chelsie has recently sort of picked up the reins and started forcing some of those mistakes. Um, but that does not mean that Chelsie is any lesser a player, right? In some ways, a really bad cast can be harder to work with for a good player,
Right.
depending on how they like to play. So I don't think that it's the best way to try to judge the skill of a player. I think that, like, if they do play again, you can see how they play again and handle different situations. I think that getting to see them play in a variety of situations can be a cool way to see how a player is able to handle certain things. But yeah, I've always been on the side of, like, you can't know how they are playing, and oftentimes a good player will make other players look really dumb. I don't think that's the case this season, but but that is certainly the case, I think, in other seasons. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the middle with it. Like, I hear what Tiffany's saying. I hear what Xavier is saying. I think it's I don't think that there's ever really any real clear cut answer on this because of the fact that, like you said, every cast is different. Like it's a mishmash cocktail of different personalities, different play styles, different social skill levels. Like it just really just depends on where you're at. And like you said, you can have a relatively decent player that is able to maneuver social situations to a decent extent, but they're playing with people that have absolutely no idea what they're doing. So it becomes very, very hard to corral them. Or you have someone that is like not that great at Big Brother, but is playing with people that are also not great at Big Brother. And they kind of just get to the end because everyone, it's just like a toss up of craziness. So it really just depends. I think really just what makes someone decent at the game is just knowing how to roll with the punches. And that's just with anything in life. If you know how to adapt, you'll probably survive. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're the best person to ever play. It just means that you know how to handle people and how to handle and make the best of situations. And I think as long as you can do that, you're probably going to be fine. And then you toss in the luck based portion of the game, and that can still throw things out of whack. So it really is just a toss up. Like no matter what, like your cast is going to be your cast, and how you react to your cast is how you react to your cast, and it is what it is. If you play with somebody, if you play with a different cast, like we want to see the greats come back and play in a big all-star season, then like it's always going to be hard because everyone is there to disprove that that person is actually a good player, and is that actually like that's inherently more difficult. So it's just a toss up. It really is. So I just think that you just have to be adaptable, and that's the end of the story for me.
Yeah, and I think that genuinely one of the reasons why many people consider Dan to be, the best or one of the best players is because not only has he played twice, but in both of those games we saw so many different situations and things that he contended with, that like such a variety of experiences that he succeeded in all of them, that it's like, okay, really, like anything that was thrown at him, he was able to overcome, as opposed to players that, like, maybe played one season, but were on one track the whole way. And I think that that is a way that we try to distinguish, to try to look at as wide a variety of circumstances as possible. But at the end of the day, we're really just like reading tea leaves. We're not actually doing science here.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is then what we have for you here today. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern to update you on everything that happens today on the Big Brother 26 live feeds, including what happened with the veto, because they will be playing in the veto today. Of course, Cam winning seems like it might be one of the most interesting scenarios, but Kimo or Rubina winning may also end up being somewhat interesting. Even MJ winning might be interesting. Who knows? Probably not, though. But stay tuned. And in the meantime, check out the Circle coverage we're doing. Check out all our scripted stuff, talking Rings of Power and all that good stuff. So tune in for it and find me over on Twitch. Aman, what do you got going on?
You can find me everywhere at Amon Adwin. You can find me over at the Diary Room podcast, where Matt Lagoria and I have been trying to determine who the best Big Brother player is of all time, whatever that ends up meaning. 6 players come into each episode, and 3 players come out. I think I forget who's coming up on this next coming episode, but you'll have to see. We're really excited. We've had a lot of alumni and RHAP people coming through thus far. Taran on the way, hopefully. So yeah, check us out over there.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us here today. And I will see all of you next time.